So yeah, Kevin.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Queer Peer Reviews, where we review queer media, good, bad, and ugly. I'm your host, Jamie, and today with me is my co-host, Bruce.
Here at Queer Peer Reviews, we review your favorite and not so favorite all forms of media with LGBT representation, going from TV shows, movies, comics, and etc.
Today we're going to be reviewing the 2016 award-winning film, Moonlight, which was written and directed by Barry Jenkins and was actually the first LGBTQ film to win Best Picture at the Oscars in 2017.
Well deserved. Moonlight takes place in Miami in the 1980s with a kid named Little who's being chased by bullies all the way across the street where he bumps into Juan.
So Juan sees Little being chased by these bullies, and after he finds himself in like a little safe spot, he offers to like take him out to lunch. He tries to comfort him because Little just isn't talking at all. So he's trying to get some info out of him as to like, where do you live? Can I take you home? Like, are you okay? But he just refuses to talk to him. So that's when he brings him home with his girlfriend Teresa, and they have him stay the night.
And at that point, he finally starts talking, and his real name is Chiron. And so Juan brings Chiron back to his house, where the mom seems very unappreciative and doesn't seem to like Juan at all. And she's like very defensive. Almost seems like a very interesting mother relationship.
Yeah.
There's like hints.
Yeah, you kind of see that the mom isn't super attentive to Chiron. But we also learn that Chiron has this best friend named Kevin. Kevin, as his best friend, recognizes that Chiron gets like bullied a lot, and there's this one scene where they're talking and he says he needs to start standing up for himself, so they kind of get into a fight with each other just so like Kevin can prove, oh, see, you can stand up for yourself.
Juan and Chiron start building up a father-son relationship in which Juan takes Chiron to learn how to swim in the ocean, which becomes a very beautiful moment in this movie.
After they go swimming, he kind of just has a conversation with Chiron about like growing up in like the area where they are, and he also says something to him which kind of sticks with him for the rest of his life, which is at some point you got to decide for yourself who you're going to be, and you can't let anybody make that decision for you.
Which is the ongoing message throughout this film.
Mm-hmm. And then after that, the next day at school, there's a little short scene. It's nothing too much, but you can there is some sort of symbolism in it. Chiron walks into a bathroom and he finds his friend Kevin and a bunch of other boys like comparing like their private parts with each other. And after that, and he kind of just thinks to himself, and I feel like that's kind of part of his journey of like realizing there is something more to him.
So another crucial information is that Juan is actually also a drug dealer, and he discovers that one of his own dealers is actually also dealing with Chiron's mother. So that explains why the relationship between Chiron and his mom are a bit rigid, because she does drugs.
Yeah, and they kind of get into a little bit of an argument there where she's like, oh, what, are you gonna raise my son, blah, 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 and like Chiron's mom kind of mentions, oh, like are you gonna be the one that tells him why everyone beats him up at school, like why he walks that way, and like that's kind of the first instance of other people kind of seeing that Chiron might be gay, like before he even knows it himself. Mm-hmm. After Juan and Chiron's mom's confrontation, we see later Chiron arriving home, and it's this silent scene with like this really like intense music, and you don't hear exactly what she says, but you can see the mom kind of shouting to Chiron, "You're a f***," and it's kind of like Chiron obviously gets really upset after that, and that's when he goes to Juan's house the next day.
Chiron next day goes to Juan's house and to ask him a question, what's a f***? And Juan has to explain to him, it is a term used against gay people in a way to make them feel bad. Juan comforts Chiron and telling him, like, you can be gay, but you just can't let people tell you that you're a f***.
Yeah, that's because Chiron asks Juan, like, well, am I a f***? And then he starts asking, like, how will I know? Like, how would I know if I am? And then that's when Teresa kind of chimes in, like, you'll know when you know. And then Juan's like, you don't have to know now, it's okay. So that was, like, really comforting to him. And then that's when Chiron learns that his mom has been buying drugs from Juan, because after that whole conversation about, like, being gay, he asks him, do you sell drugs? He says yes. And then he goes, does my mom use drugs? He says yes, and he kind of makes that connection and leaves. So this moves us to chapter 2, titled Chiron. Chiron is now a teenager in high school. I believe it's high school now. And the first thing you see is him straight up getting bullied by a bunch of other people in class, basically comparing him to a woman, like making like tampon jokes at him because like he's like acting a little weird in class. He kind of hesitates like leaving school that day, but that's when Kevin shows up.
So yeah, Kevin meets up with Chiron in detention after he was caught having sex with a girl in the stairwell.
Yeah, and Kevin starts like giving Chiron all these details about what he was doing to this girl and what the girl was doing to him, and you could like visibly see Chiron being super uncomfortable with the conversation.
Yeah, it's not his forte.
For some reason. So things are not okay at home with Chiron. He still constantly goes to Juan and Teresa's house, but we also learn that Juan has passed away during this time skip.
So all that trouble, Chiron goes to the beach to escape mentally and to just take in the waves at the night under the moonlight.
But yeah, so while he's just sitting there, all of a sudden Kevin appears and sits with him. They start to smoke together and just start talking about like their like future. They talk about like deep things like crying too, like how like in a lot of
it gets very emotional.
While they're having this really deep conversation with each other, it starts getting a little playful, and then Kevin puts his arm kind of like around Chiron, and they stare at each other for a little bit, and they both lean in for a kiss, and things start getting a little more intimate from there.
But it's also very amenable. It's a break in vulnerability from like trying to escape from the persona of being like masculine, especially in this adolescent and this teenager.
And that's a recurring theme throughout Moonlight, is that specifically like gay men of color are taught that they need to act a certain way. And for Chiron, this was one of his moments where he didn't have to put on this like fake persona of like a hyper masculine man, and he's able to talk to his friend Kevin about like things like crying and like just a lot of emotional stuff, and he was finally able to be himself around him and let his guard down. Yeah, and then this is actually like the one scene like where you do see Chiron like embrace his sexuality, because like a lot of the other scenes, like when people call him like slurs and stuff and say he's gay and like blah blah blah, compare him to a woman, he just puts a wall up and he doesn't let anything show.
And Kevin broke down that wall.
But yeah, so after that, Kevin gives him a ride home. It's a little like awkward and silent at first, but to the end when they say goodbye, like it's like nothing really changed how they were kind of acting with each other until the next day. Kevin is approached by Chiron's bully, Terrell, I believe his name is, and they start just talking about like a game they used to play as kids where it's like
knock down and don't get up.
And he's like, kids don't do that anymore. If I told you to hit somebody, would you hit them?
It's not a game, that's just straight up violence.
Yeah.
That's assault.
So after class is over, after lunch is over, he tells Kevin, hit him, and he's pointing at Chiron, and the day after they had this intimate moment with each other, so both internally both are struggling at this moment.
And so we thought the wall was broken up, it sort of went back up, and Kevin, was a bit forced to hit Chiron because he didn't want to get picked on by the bully. And he just tells Chiron, just don't get up, just stay down. And it's a bit of a sad moment after the day before. So, and it angers the hell out of Chiron, and that leads to the next day he comes back, straight up grabs like a school chair and just knocks over Terrell.
Yeah, and you could tell something was gonna happen because the way he like was marching into school, like pushing the doors open, like you've never seen this like violent side of Chiron before. And as soon as he gets into class, like you think he's gonna sit down maybe, but no.
I don't advocate too much for violence, but he did deserve it.
He did deserve it. And that leads to Chiron getting arrested and taken away in a cop car, and Kevin watches him. And this brings us to Chapter 3, Black.
Years later, Chiron is now an adult, sort of living in Atlanta, and following a bit of Juan's footsteps, unfortunately, as a drug dealer.
And he's definitely made a name for himself. He's like this like super tough guy. And then one night he gets a phone call, and it turns out it's from Kevin. He basically wants to catch up with him and saying, hey, if you're ever in town, like I'll cook for you. I'm a chef now, blah, blah, blah. He also kind of apologizes for the way things ended between them in the past.
On his way to Juan's diner, Chiron meets up with his mother, who is actually getting better help. I think rehabilitation, right?
And apologizes for basically messing up Chiron's like entire life by acting the way she did, like under the influence of drugs and whatnot.
You know, at the end of that conversation, Chiron ends up forgiving her, and there's sort of a bit of a closure for that scene.
And that's when he starts driving down to Miami. So later that night, he arrives at I believe it's a diner that Kevin works at. He enters, but like before he enters, like you can kind of see him like being a little nervous. He fixes himself up. He like brushes his hair and stuff.
Yeah.
To make sure he looks good after not seeing his friend for so long.
So Kevin and Chiron meet. They hug, you know, and you know they sort of have like this like very warm greeting for each other. They start sharing drinks and. I think he like prepares them the special meals, like
chef's special.
Chef's special. So while they're sharing over this meal, they have a conversation of what they're doing with their lives. Chiron tells them that he has been dealing drugs, and you know Kevin's disapproves of it and tells him
this isn't you.
Exactly, this isn't you, and eventually leads to another question. Leads to a question that Chiron asks is, "Why did you call me?"
Yeah, and originally on the phone call, Kevin basically said like, "Oh, there was a guy that came in that reminded me of you." Which wasn't exactly the truth. When Kevin kind of starts to like say that reason again, he's like, no, like really, why did you call me? And he says, well, that guy came in here and he played this song and it was Hello Stranger. And just like the lyrics of that like are kind of intimate and like saying like how you haven't seen this person for so long and like missing them and like just wanting to be with them. And he gets up and plays that song on the jukebox for Chiron.
After the conversation, Chiron drives Kevin back to his house, and they end up talking about their past as they were back in high school. And eventually Chiron tells him that he hasn't touched anyone since that fateful day on the beach.
Yeah, and the film basically from there ends, fast forwards a little bit of Chiron resting his head on Kevin's shoulder, just like how they were on the beach, and it basically shows how Chiron's like vulnerability, like he's able to express himself only around Kevin for the most part, and how they're now reunited, and it ends with a beautiful shot of young Chiron on the beach.
Looking back and looking at the audience under the blue moonlight. And that final shot kind of shows more of like Chiron's inner self. It's a very beautiful shot, and like I said, right in the cover right here.
Beautiful.
Let's zoom that in there. Very beautiful.
So let's get to the ratings here at Queer Peer Reviews. We're going to rate everything review out of 5 different categories for a grand total of 100.
Let's start with representation. How did Moonlight do well with queer themes?
And for representation, I give it a 9.9.
I give it 9.5.
Very nice. Yeah, honestly, like, the story that Moonlight is trying to tell is not a story that you really see a lot in queer media, and I just feel like the way it was portrayed was just something everybody needed to see, and it's this whole different side of queer media that not everybody likes to necessarily see all the time. Like, all we like to see is like, yay, I came out of the closet, everyone loves me now. Oh shit, everyone loves me now, and everything's fine. But I feel like this was a more raw.
And what I love about it is just a hard-hitting reality, especially more for people of color, because there's a lot of people of color like that who, will also want to come out as gay, but, the reality is that they just, I say reality a lot, fucking it up.
Real.
It's real. Now, and that's what I love to see. It's just the best slice of life.
Let's move on to our next topic, the queer comfort scale.
And our scale for queer comfort is?
I give it a 9.
Me too.
Hey.
So as I said before, it's the reality of it, and while we do give it a 9, there are obviously moments where, you will feel comfortable coming out as queer. The best thing with queer comfort is just like Kevin, everybody has someone like Kevin that they can be more comfortable with. And despite this movie being a harsh reality a bit, it also serves as a motivational piece to let other people know that it's all okay to be more vulnerable with yourself, and you can break down these walls of like toxic masculinity, especially with someone like Kevin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my reasoning is basically the same thing as yours. Like, no matter how alone you might feel and how caged off you feel like you need to present yourself, there's always going to be at least one person in your life, like Kevin, that you're going to feel vulnerable around and feel comfortable to just be yourself.
And next up, originality.
And for originality, I give it a 10.
9.5.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've never seen anything quite as like raw as Moonlight, and I feel like that's definitely why it deserved all those like Academy Awards and all the nominations. I just feel like it's just really unique, and I wish I did see it in theaters because I did not.
Yeah, no, I watched it on my laptop in my room, but yeah, no, I did not. Wasn't like expecting too much, and I also think that movie gave me more appreciation for like slice of life films than just like the usual stuff I watch, like action horror, and yeah, no, that movie changed my perspective on films pretty much.
Yeah, and like I said, like a lot of films that we're used to having in the LGBTQ community is like, oh, happy, yes, we're gay, we overcame it, and like it's just feel-good films a lot of the time. And I feel like we need more realistic films. Like not everything is rainbow and sunshine.
Yeah, and the best thing is that this gives perspective to a lot of people who don't have the perspective of what it means to be gay, especially with being a person of color.
Yeah, and like not everybody has the best home life when it comes to like being queer.
Exactly.
Next, let's talk about the writing.
And for writing, we give it
I give it a 9.8.
10.
Very nice. Ooh, same color scheme too.
Oh, cool.
I can go first. This isn't like a bad reason why I didn't give it a 10. I think it's more of I wish the last chapter of this film was just a little bit longer, because I feel like we were just cut short of learning a little bit more about Chiron's life and how he grew as a queer man. And like I love how they got reunited. I just wish there was a little bit more they would have given us. But nonetheless, like
it was
amazing writing.
Big numbers from here. Yeah, and the writing, I especially also loved in the first chapter with Juan, who basically helped give him also the comfort to Chiron as a kid, especially explaining about being gay and how to be also a bit tough around. It's just like, and I was a little sad when Juan passed away by chapter 2, because I really want to see more of him. But I guess that's the reality of things, and that was like his father figure. It's I just think the first chapter was my favorite part of it.
Oh, I think the first chapter is definitely my favorite, especially with that scene where he does like ask Juan like what it is, and
not only that, but the ocean scene as well is what it's like to learn how to swim and float.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not only is the writing amazing, just the cinematography is just fantastic.
Gorgeous. And last but not least, our overall feelings.
And last but not least, our overall feelings towards the film. I give it a 9.9.
I give it a 10.
Amazing. Yeah, like, amazing film. Like I said, like, I feel like what would have given me that 10 is just a little bit more of Chiron's adult life, because I just wanted more,
But yeah, no, and like I said, besides all of that, the film overall, great message behind it. Love the symbolism through visuals, and just to see like Chiron growing from kid to teenage to adulthood, and you just see the sort of progress of what like from the previous chapters that sort of affected him in his future adulthood. It's just like you see like the most beautiful process, and especially with Kevin being that supportive friend, even after all the chapters, that basically also helped him just be a little more vulnerable and not have to hide behind this wall of masculinity.
Exactly, and I feel like we definitely need more films that talk about vulnerability in the community, because I feel like a lot of people, they try, like one of the things that Juan said to Chiron in the beginning is like, don't let anybody tell you who you're supposed to be. And I just feel like a lot of people, a lot of the times, they're afraid of being perceived a certain way, and they just put up a wall and this fake persona of who people think they should be. And that's why this film is just amazing.
And that is why I think we all agree Moonlight deserved that Oscars for Best Picture.
All right, so let's get to our QPR total. Trayvon, hit us with that gay shit.
Okay, the Oscar winner Best Picture in 2017, Moonlight has earned a 96.6 from QPR, which gives it a gay plus.
A gay plus, yes. Definitely well deserved. Moonlight, excellent film. It's beautiful. You need to watch it.
And I believe it's our highest rated one in our QPR channel, right?
Yes, definitely well deserved.
Exactly.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Congratulations to Moonlight for getting this amazing score from us. It's definitely well deserved. In the description below, we'll have links to the Trevor Project along with other useful LGBTQ links, also links to our social media. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching.